all we're doing.
All right, welcome everyone. It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2020. As usual, we are gathered here for our regular agenda setting session. In addition, we have a special called session for the purpose of handling one item of old business, and following the conclusion of our agenda setting session, an executive session. And so I'm going to ask clerk to call the roll.
Davenport.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Denson.
Here.
Naismith.
Here.
Edwards. Harrod.
Present.
Thornton.
Here.
Hamby.
Here.
All right, given that we have a quorum, we have one item of old business, the intergovernmental contract and lease agreement with the Classic Center Authority, and call for any public input on this item. You have the opportunity as an individual for 3 minutes of public input. When you begin speaking, the light will turn green. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the light will turn yellow. And when your 3 minutes has concluded, the light will turn red. There's some cards on the podium. If you would fill out one of those and hand them to the attorney who's right in front of the podium, that way we can make sure we get your name correct for the record. So, good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Michael Songster. I live at 1450 West Hancock Avenue, and I'm here speaking for 100% Athens Renewable Energy Initiative. And first, I'd like to thank the Mayor and Commission for taking the time to add language to the lease agreement to signal the expectation that the Classic Center Arena will be constructed in such a way as to be in line with the ACC 100% renewable resolution. I would also like to acknowledge the continuing work of ACC staff, and specifically Andrew Saunders, to make the 100% resolution a policy reality. However, I would like to request that Exhibit E be removed from the agreement. 2 years ago, before the adoption of the 100% resolution, this would seem to be a step in the right direction. But in the context of our commitment to the resolution, the levels of renewable energy and energy efficiency recommended are insufficient. I don't think we know at this point how close we can feasibly get to net zero on this project. So it is too early to be setting the bar as low as 25% for on or off-site renewables. I also believe that there's a feeling among you that this project can be an exemplary example of sustainable design. And I believe that as well, which is why at the outset I think we should set the bar significantly higher. Though the resolution calls for the ACC government to be 100% clean and renewable by 2035, by necessity, individual projects will need to meet that standard much earlier and when it is most opportune. For newly constructed projects, that is most easily accomplished at the beginning, which is why it is the position of the 100% Athens Renewable Energy Initiative that new ACC facilities should be constructed to a net zero standard. In the case of the arena, if that proves after a good faith effort to be too ambitious, there's a lot of room between 100% and 25%. And if the project ends up generating 60 or 70% of its energy needs, we will know that we have gotten the best project we were able to, and it would be substantially better than setting our expectations so low at the very start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Songster.
Carol Myers, 260 Spalding Circle, and Michael and I didn't work together here, although we have the same sentiments, so hopefully I won't be repeating too much. I'm speaking tonight concerning the contract and lease agreement with the Classic City Authority. First, I'd like to thank you all for responding to my concerns voiced at your last voting meeting to include wording in this agreement that would make explicit from the get-go that our commitment to 100% renewable energy is a serious one, both in the development of the Classic Center and with the accompanying hotel and senior living development. I greatly appreciate your discussions at that meeting and the revisions that have been incorporated since then. I'd like to make a few points concerning them. Concerning the arena, it's now stated that the Classic Center Authority will participate in the government's plan for obtaining 100% of its energy needs by 2030. As in is, the wording continues to say that it may be accomplished by a variety of means, including the recommendation of the ACC Sustainability Office. Like Michael before me, I'm grateful for the role that Andrew Saunders has played with the move to 100% renewables, but I fear that Exhibit E recommendations are not ambitious enough. Speaking on behalf behalf of 100% Athens, we would like the arena to be as energy efficient and carbon neutral as possible in its construction and its operation, and to use renewable energies to the highest percentage possible, starting with a recommendation of 25% of the arena's energy coming from renewables seems less ambitious than needed from this starting point. Today, I read an article titled Communities on the Future of the Future, Accelerating Zero Energy District Master Planning. The authors, one from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and the other from the U.S. Department of Energy, caution that, quote, I'm quoting, developers can be reluctant to set firm zero energy or similarly aggressive energy goals because of the uncertainties of cost and technical feasibility and the current lack of zero energy district examples, okay? When energy targets are not set initially, though, creative solutions and beneficial trade-offs that might make zero energy possible might never be suggested. This can result in a chicken and egg scenario where solutions are not offered because energy goals were not stated. I do not want this to be the case with our arena. Second, concerning the hotel and senior housing development, I'm glad to see the addition of a renewable energy category to the RFP for those projects. I just wanted to make sure that everyone listening knows that the phrase renewable energy includes energy efficiency and carbon neutral construction efforts as well. Classic Center Director Paul Kramer met with myself and 2 other 100% Athens members last week, and thank you for that. And it had not been clear to him that our push for renewable energy included more than solar panels and wind turbines. The first step in any efforts towards 100% renewable energy is always doing everything possible to reduce energy use, starting with using the most effective and carbon neutral insulating building materials and the most energy efficient appliances and heating cooling systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Good evening, and I just want to again say thank you for all of your hard work with regard to this agreement. I personally wanted to thank Andrew Saunders and Carol Myers, Michael and Mary for coming and meeting with us and their assistance in helping to develop really what I thought was a great roadmap for us to follow. On behalf of our board, I also want you to know that we're very interested as an authority in the renewable energy program and the ability to reduce our overall carbon footprint. I'll remind you that we've just finished a rather huge program ourselves with regard to energy performance contracting. That was a $1.5 million investment in our public facilities of Athens. This investment garnered the Unified Government's Leadership in Water Conservation Award, saving the county 1.1 million gallons each year. Additionally, this project is expected to save us 850,000 kilowatt hours each year. The authority and our foundation are excited to be able to offer MIT's living wage as we develop this arena. This, in fact, is a part of the overall quest of the authority to become a true learning lab for the hospitality industry. While our foundation is currently funding over $30,000 a year in scholarships in the area of music and the arts, we've also created endowments that now can fund another $28,000 a year for hospitality scholarships. We partner directly with Athens Technical College, Piedmont College, and the University of Georgia in a wide variety of educational opportunities designed to lift employees up and provide meaningful careers through our industry. Thank you again for this opportunity to work with you and provide the kind of long-lasting project that I know will be great for our entire community, both now and in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Any other input on our item of old business? All right. Before we get to commission input and any motions, just notes for members of the public. There are a few modifications between the version that's on our agenda tonight and the version that was on our agenda a couple of weeks ago. Most significantly is a commitment to participate in the unified government's program of ensuring that all of our public facilities, local public facilities, will be net neutral in the future. We've set those goals of 2035 and 2050 as of a year ago. I think it's important that everybody understands that when we think about local public facilities, we're really thinking about an entire inventory, an entire portfolio of public facilities, and these have to work together in tandem. Some of that work is on-site work. You heard folks talk about energy efficiency and building materials. There certainly will be some renewals generated on-site, and there will also be renewables generated off-site. So in many ways, this is a commitment by the Classic Center Authority, but more significantly, it's a commitment by the unified government writ large and by the selected body to ensure that that entire inventory of ours will move to net neutral. And because the Classic Center is a locally owned operation, they're part of the family, as Marlon Brando may have said once upon a time. So that's a new component. This version also calls out the MIT living wage calculator that we've talked about before as a measure of living wage. And of course, that's a moving calculator that's going to change as the economy changes. Finally, the RFPs for both the hotel project and for the senior condominium project include language focused on sustainability and the wage scale for those projects too. So that summarizes, for the most part, kind of the modifications that you see in front of you. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, so when we voted a couple weeks ago to hold this, if I recall, the vote was to hold this for the March meeting. I was surprised to open up the agenda today and see that we're having a special called session to vote on it. I feel like the work's not complete. The agenda, having a proper agenda session to discuss it gives more opportunity for public input. And, this is a huge project. It's not just an arena. This is multiple buildings basically remaking the entire eastern portion of downtown. And we do have a master plan. And there's about a dozen or so pages of the master plan that are dedicated to this area. And most of the stuff we're talking about in this agreement is not in this plan. I feel very strongly that the committees that deal with the RFPs for these projects, which will be privately developed projects on public land, and the arena itself will be funded with public dollars. I feel very strongly that there needs to be more layers of transparency and more opportunities for public participation, that the committees that are dealing with the RFPs should actually participate in writing the RFPs, and that there should be more citizen participation on those committees, some expertise beyond this local government. Some citizens who have expertise either in urban planning or renewable energy or localized economic development. We were sold this project as a bill of goods that would have a greatly positive economic impact on our local community. I'm fearing that this is more and more turning out to be a project that is going to line billionaire corporations' pockets and be more of an exclusive playground for the wealthy and the elite. What I hear from my constituents is, many of them don't ever set foot in the Classic Center. They can't afford to go to events there. I can barely afford to go to events there, maybe once a year. We really need to go above and beyond to make sure that this is the best possible project and to be as transparent as possible. We have another huge SPLOST-funded project where we're remaking northern downtown, and we're having, a year's worth of planning for that with very public open meetings. There's one tomorrow night. I feel we should have something akin to that process here. And at the very least, we should have this vote on this project during a regularly scheduled voting session like we voted to do at the meeting a couple weeks ago. So I'd like to move that we hold this and we have the vote in 2 weeks at our regularly scheduled voting session.
A second.
Mr. Mayor.
I've got a motion and a second. Motion from Commissioner Link to hold, second from Commissioner Parker. And, input
I'm
from
the one
Commissioner
that
Eastman.
made that motion to hold, and the motion was to hold it for no longer than the next meeting and sooner if the parties were available. That was the motion that we passed.
Other commissioner input? Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a bit of a question in line with some of the public comment we had. To point 5.1 on the lease agreement.
Do you have a page?
That is on, I do not have a page.
That's all right.
It's on page 4 of the, where it states that at the very end, this may be accomplished in accordance through a variety of means, including the recommendations of ACC Sustainability Officer Andrew Saunders, as detailed in Exhibit E. And just going to, following the public comment where it does kind of set, and I do see it says at least 25%, but kind of sets the bar at 25% renewable energy. While, I mean, I agree that if we're going to actually follow through with our promise to this community and the future of this community, that we're going to be at 100% renewable energy by 2035, we're going to have to start getting more bold with our developments and with how we're going to actually pursue that plan. I mean, I guess, yeah, no, the arena is going to, one of the big reasons that we're going to be able to get to 100% renewable energy that we say is by reducing energy usage. But the creation of the arena is going to be a net increase in our energy usage. It's not replacing a different building to make it more efficient. It's going to be adding on the amount of electricity and energy and stuff that the county uses. I think therefore making it even more important that we try to get really close, if not at that net zero with a project like this. And so I guess my big question is here on the Exhibit E, with it referenced so specifically in the lease agreement, and I guess this question can be to the attorney. I mean, it doesn't seem, we're not going to be held to those recommendations, correct? We can move outside of them. That Exhibit E is just a recommendation?
The Exhibit E, you will be held to that. It is if they meet that requirement, they've met the requirements of the agreement. That's why the Exhibit E is attached.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I think that the suggestion of us removing that sentence and removing Exhibit E from the document as something that we are legally beholden to would be wise. Yeah. Be curious to hear what others think.
Other commission input. Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps since this is a document from our sustainability officer, I wonder if we should have Andrew address this, because it seems to me like we could, I don't want to be unreasonable, but I also want to be, to capture what's feasible. And so maybe it's targeting a minimum of 15 to 20%. Can we get Andrew to help us out with where,
Andrew Williams Andrew Saunders.
where we can, his processing for how he got it to this far.
Let me ask the
Maybe
attorney a
help us
question.
out.
This is
Commissioner Naismith.
targeting a 15 to 20% decrease. Of course, that means they have to hit 15 to 20%, but if they hit 30%, that would be okay.
That would be okay, that's correct.
Yeah. So this is the minimum.
That's correct. It is the minimum. They can always do more.
This is the minimum decrease. So they don't have to hit 20. They can hit 40.
And just as Andrew approaches, remember in terms of sort of development benchmarks for any project, we would move from here into the concept phase of development, which again involves sort of further finessing input, and then into the engineering phase. So we've got two much more detailed steps than we're taking tonight. Hey, evening, Andrew Saunders. How are
Happy to
you?
be here. I guess I'll take whatever questions y'all have.
Commissioner Wright?
Well, yeah, so on the Exhibit E, can you just give us some feedback on targeting a 15 to 20% decrease, and then on D, it's renewable energy, ensuring at least 25%. Can you help us out there?
Starting on the first question, 15 to 20% decrease over the ASHRAE standards. One thing to keep in mind is that the ASHRAE standards are already more efficient than Georgia State Building Code. So a 15 to 25% decrease is a 30+% decrease over a code-built building today.
Okay.
And that aligns with the current LEED point system. So I tried to find a settling point that was economically efficient. Sure, more efficiency is plausible, but you reach a point where you might want to mobilize that dollar for renewable energy or water conservation or some other sustainability measure. To your second point, a 25% or more renewables comes from my experience with our building inventory. So on sites where we have deployed renewable energy, we have offset between 30 and 70% of electricity use. Few important points here. This building is going to run with some substantial night loading, so it's not super well equipped for on-site renewables to take off that heavy lifting. Also, there's going to perhaps be a limiting roof space for on-site renewables, so it could be that the building could actually be sized for more and we don't have the adequate space there, and there are some challenges to trying to place it on an adjacent building that is currently not allowed under Georgia code. And so I feel like that was a floor that was achievable. I certainly would hope that more could be achieved, and really, before you'll know more, we've got to understand what the building design is going to be like, what the building performance is estimated to be like, and what the private sector has to offer.
And this is why it's been in LRC for a year and a half or 2 years, us trying to
been a
learn
minute.
all the nuances of it. It's very complicated. I'm glad that this document is in there, and I can say that I think that the targets are reasonable if they're coming from Andrew's processing of the whole big picture. I'm not sure how to modify it at this point.
Commissioner Neesmith.
Mr. Saunders, congratulations on the new solar panels on the new fire station number 2 and the Ag Extension Office.
Thank you.
Which cover 2 south-facing roofs almost entirely. Any idea what the amount of energy contribution or renewable energy contribution those things are? Any idea at all?
30% on the fire station, and I want to say closer to 40 on cooperative extension.
Okay, so those had 2 roofs on 2 one-story buildings. A roof on a one-story building.
I understand the point you're trying to make.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm trying to make a point, but I
Yeah.
just understand that it's difficult to get 100% even when you've got a small building and a big roof.
And to speak to some points brought up by our public, offsite, there is a market available today for offsite energy. It comes at a premium. So for the Classic Center, the easiest to access tool comes from our utility provider for that site. Would add 2 cents, potentially 1 to 2 cents a kilowatt hour to retire renewable energy credits that have already been generated in the system. They would not account for new renewable energy being put into the system. And so that is approximately 15, 20% premium on what they pay for energy now. So again, what I've brought you a conservative and achievable objective is where I tried to strike this, and I really do view it as a first step. We need technology to evolve. We need policy to evolve. I feel like this was a meaningful approach, but certainly it's up to this body to decide if they want to go a different route.
Commissioner Parker.
When you say we need policy to evolve in order for us to hit more robust and higher standards, what could you talk about what that means?
So one relatively simple explanation is right now there are large industries in Georgia that can work with the utility to source off-site renewables specifically for their site. It's called the CRISP program, and then they benefit from having a contractual relationship there. The last time that program was offered in Georgia, it was had a minimum sizing that was significantly higher than the Classic Center and the arena combined would account for. I've personally testified at state hearings appealing for a lower threshold so that government can participate in something like that.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Andrew? All right, other commission input? Commissioner Neesmith?
Well, I think that we've discussed this quite a bit over the last few months, and I think that the result is we've come to this point where we've got a proposal in front of us that is achievable, and it's a baseline in terms of energy conservation. I don't think this is a playground for billionaires. It's a playground for me, and I'm not a billionaire, that's for sure. And a lot of people, and it's going to create 600 new jobs or more. So I think there's a lot of very positive aspects to this, and I think we need to get on with it.
Is that a motion, Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, I'll make a substitute motion to accept the intergovernmental agreement as presented. And the lease agreement.
I second.
All right, I've got a substitute motion from Commissioner Neesmith, second from Commissioner Thornton. Other input? Gene, could you call roll?
Neesmith,
Yes.
Harrod,
Yes.
Thornton,
Yes.
Hamby,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Parker,
No.
Link,
No.
Wright,
Yes.
Denson,
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no.
All right. Thank you. Motion carries. I need a motion to move into executive session upon conclusion of the agenda setting time.
So moved.
Got a
Second?
motion from Commissioner Wright, second from Commissioner Neesmith. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we will now move on to our agenda-setting meeting. All right, so now is the time for citizen input on the consent agenda of our agenda-setting session. That is items number 1 through 5. Any interest in speaking to items 1 through 5 on our consent agenda? Commissioner Neesmith?
Yeah, it wasn't clear to me at first, as my email showed the manager today, that item number 3, the calendar year 18 pavement improvement maintenance program, that's just an amendment to a contract to take care of, to do some housekeeping, right?
Yes, sir. That's a unit-based contract, and that's now complete, and this is just truing up the unit-based figures. When we, unit price figures, we initially estimate what it's going to be, and then we actually know the quantities at the end, and that just trues that up. And it's still below the approved amount.
Thank you very much.
So Commissioner Neesmith, you're okay leaving that on consent? Commissioners, is there any other item 1 through 5 that anyone would like to pull from consent for discussion? Commissioner Link?
Number 1,
Any other items? All right, so before we get to discussion, I'll ask for resident input on items 1 and 6 through 11. Item 1 and 6 through 11. Any public input on those items tonight? All right, Commissioner Link, number 1.
oh, wait.
1 or 6 through 11. Yes, ma'am. Yep, that's correct. Sorry.
You guys are moving so fast tonight. Carol Myers, 260 Spalding Circle. I'm speaking tonight in support of the Community Energy Fund. Speaking on behalf of 100% Athens Renewable Energy Initiative, I want to applaud the efforts of Sustainability Director Andrew Saunders and his creative initiative to find a funding source for the Community Energy Fund from increased tax revenue expected from increased Georgia power prices. This clever approach will allow us as a community to use some of the money paid in an expected increased Georgia power bills to cover their growing expenses from such things as the over-budgeted nuclear power plant. And it will be funded by a portion of that income. I'm repeating myself here, so let's forget that. This fund will then be used to help meet our 100% renewable energy goals by 2035 for the government and 2050 for the whole community. It will specifically help support community initiatives to help with energy conservation efforts in our low-income neighborhoods whose energy burdens are highest. If you are low income, you pay a high percentage of your income to pay your utility bills. And in Clarke County, our energy bills are higher than in many parts of the country. Andrew Saunders has used the examples of Minneapolis, Chicago, Denver, Sarasota, and Salt Lake City to develop a plan specific to Athens. I thank him for his work. His efforts and your vote for the Community Energy Fund will move our community forward with it. We will be able to get closer to our 2035 and 2050 goals and do so in a way that addresses an essential part of our 100% resolution. Its commitment to equity in making the energy transition, and I'm quoting from our resolution, in a manner to redress historical inequities in our community by prioritizing resources to train and hire people from within marginalized communities to participate in the energy efficiency and renewable energy workforce, and by facilitating energy efficiency upgrades, opportunities for clean transportation, and renewable energy installations in low-income communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Any other input on number 1 or 6 through 11? All right. Number 1, Commissioner Link?
Yeah, this is a crosswalk that's certainly necessary, but it's essentially on UGA's campus. It's a crosswalk between their parking deck and campus on Hull Street. And I'm just curious, I know 4 years ago when I first got on the commission, we put aside, I believe it was $250,000 for pedestrian safety measures, and we ended up putting in a whole bunch of crosswalks, and the vast majority of them directly access the university. Is there any method by which we could ask the university to help pay for some of this pedestrian safety infrastructure, especially when it essentially links the university across a public street?
Good question. I'll let Manager Williams talk about this.
Yes, I'm sorry we didn't include that in the report. They are actually paying for this.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Good to know. Thank you. We can put it back on consent.
Well, and for the public's benefit, we will add that to the report and graystate it
Yeah.
so people can see that.
Thank you.
Can I go back on consent?
Back on consent?
Yes, I'm good with that. Thank you.
All right, number 1 moves back to consent, Jean. And we move forward to item number 6, our calendar year 20 pavement maintenance project. Any input on this item? We had a work session about this a week ago. Commissioner Neesmith?
Well, I want to thank staff. I had that street I mentioned last month, Deerfield Run, apparently did drop off the list of even being looked at. And they looked at it, and they're going to add it onto the list. It's a short street. It won't cost much. Add it onto the list before our voting meeting. It's a Deerfield Run, so thank you.
Yeah, Manager Williams?
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner Neesmith. And Commissioner Neesmith had relayed that when we were doing it using human staff, that's a very short run of road. I think there's only 2 driveways on it, and it was not graded. It was graded, however, with the new automated system that we have and found to be in need of replacement. And because there were some roads done in there recently, contractors probably weren't going to get back there for some time, so staff saw fit to, since it qualified, to add it to the list. So it will be added to the list for your voting meeting in March.
Thank you, Manager Williams. Yeah, Commissioner Hamby?
Yeah, so thank you. So where has this automated list been, where has this automation been going on? And if all of us have short streets in our districts.
Sure.
With 2 driveways. So
this was an initiative that we started late last year.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, have all the streets been on? Have all the streets in Athens been looked at through this process?
They have. They're still quality controlling the data, and this will help inform the next few years. This list is, this is really more than we probably have funding for. But if pricing works out, then we have some pre-approved roads to go ahead and add to it. And y'all will be given all the ratings once all that data has been QC'd.
Okay. I guess, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. So we're looking at funding, and I guess I'm just wondering, we have all this TSPLOST dollars. Why can't we move through these lists quicker with the paving?
Well, that part, the logistics of this too, how much we can pave, the striping and that type of thing, we've sort of staggered it across the life of the T-SPLOST to go ahead and, each year, we're doing much more than we used to, as I know some of y'all are familiar with.
I see that, but I'm just wondering, T-SPLOST afforded us the opportunity to get some of these streets done that have been asked for a while now, and They've been on the
Well,
list.
and we are working on the deficit list,
No, I know that. I guess I'm just wondering,
and we're hitting the worst ones first and kind of working our way back that
I
way.
guess I'm wondering, do we have T-SPLOST money in the bank for repaving? And if so, why don't we go ahead and use those dollars to get this list done quicker?
I think the debt associated with the T-SPLOST, I think y'all approved up to, there was a certain amount. We, unlike the SPLOST 2020 where we sold bonds on the front end, we did not do that with T-SPLOST. I'm remembering 8 million, Commissioner. I need to check that.
Right.
I think there was a line of credit that we could borrow and pay interest on if we wanted to go ahead and jumpstart things, but we were able to move some projects along fairly quickly. So it could be that, I think and I want to check with staff, I appreciate your question. I think it had to do with disruption to the community, a lot of paving all at once, and so, but I can find out more about
Yeah,
it.
and that's fine. I think you see my point. I think the community, when they pass T-SPLOST, probably would accept a level of disruption if it meant getting their street done quicker.
Yes, sir.
So,
Well, I will say this, it's sort of, up to this point, our practice has been with staff review and grading of streets, and it was done, as you know, arterials and collectors on an annual basis in the neighborhood streets every couple of years. This automated gets everything all at once, and it is more objective, if you will. I mean, it's going to grade these streets based on, conditions on the ground, and it's going to give us a 3 to 5 year look of need, and that'll be something that you will have access to as well. So it's not a waiting to this night every year to see what streets made it and what streets didn't. And in doing so, I think folks can kind of see wondering when their streets might be next, and give some opportunity for questioning of why.
Manager Williams, to Commissioner Hamby's question, could we find out
No, I owe him
if
the
there
answer,
are
yes.
kind of excess T-SPLOST funds that have been accumulated, and if we could enlarge the package? I think that's this.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll have an answer for you.
Sorry, I don't express myself right.
Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And this question will be to Manager Williams also. So from my understanding, the road that was added on District 6, that was because of the new system we had a presentation on last week, found that road in need, and that's why I got put back on. I mean, are we going through that list for all of those electronic scanned streets and finding all the ones that had fallen off and putting back on? Because that would be my concern, that we're adding some back on there, but not others that might be in my district or other people's districts. Yeah.
No, and I asked the same question of staff today. So here's where we are. If we're at the beginning of paving season, and in order to do even the amount that we're doing now, the contractor needs time to work through the summer and into October. So for the public, the paving season goes from March to October, when you're out of cold freezing and before you hit hard freezing. And, but we're at a point where we're confident in the data, but we're still quality controlling, looking at certain things, testing it. So it could be that there are a few streets that pop up. We need to go ahead and move something forward. If there's a wholesale change or a wholesale infusion of streets that are found that come under what you're approving, then we'll come back to you. But in this case, we want to go ahead and move forward streets that we're positive that need assistance. Mm-hmm. It's just a competition with others, and we should have that data soon.
Commissioner Neesmith.
It might help to know a little bit about this particular street. It isn't that they missed it this year, it's that it wasn't on the list 2 years ago at all. It wasn't even rated. So it kind of got lost because it's a little street back in the subdivision, back in the woods, and So it's not like, I suspect there's a lot of streets that fall under that problem where they just weren't on the list at all because they weren't rated. So,
Commissioner Hamby.
Sure. I guess I'm wondering, I appreciate Commissioner Neesmith saying that. I'm wondering, is there a list of streets that have fallen off the list because of this new way that has been out in the public? And, because if so, then that's, we've kind of got expectations up. I may have told somebody that there's streets on a list and now it's all of a sudden off, and I'm going to.
Didn't fall off.
Well, I understand your point, Jerry, but there's some list out there evidently of streets that aren't on that were on a list but aren't on a list now.
Well, and I will follow up with an answer, and we can certainly, at the voting meeting, for the viewing public, respond to that, but I can certainly respond to y'all. And I would say at the time, when TSPLOST was being deliberated, there was a point in time snapshot of the deficit list. And so the voting public understands, ever since the downturn, we have not been funding paving at the rate that is equal to the life cycle of the actual road. So there was a growing list of roads that were falling behind. The average life of pavement's about 17 years, okay, and basically pavement's like skin. Once it starts cracks happening, water gets in, it undermines the base. Y'all have seen potholes and how that works. And so at the time, based on our human rating, roads graded out, and we draw the line at the resources we had to do the paving. Now, depending on, I say that was a snapshot in time. Some roads will degrade quicker than others. Some roads have more traffic than others. And so I think at the time it was qualified, this is what we know now. Next year, it might change slightly based on the rating. We've moved to this automated where it's going to be more of a 3 to 5 year look, so it won't have as much subjectivity or changing over from year to year. So to answer your question, Commissioner Hamby, it could be that some roads did fall off because other roads degraded faster than those did.
Well, and I guess that's, if you don't mind, Mayor, just me making a quick point. I guess that's my issue. If we had the roads on a list at some point in time, then I feel like those roads ought to be, if people were expecting those roads to be paved if they're on the list, and we put that list out there and voted on it at some point in time, then those roads ought to stay on the list.
Right.
And then we keep them on the list and then start our new system that way. You see, I don't think any roads should have dropped off a list because we changed the way we did the criteria.
And it could have been that none have fallen off. So let me look.
I may be getting stewed up over nothing.
Well,
right?
no, I mean, you have a great point, but let me check, and we can respond to that, both to this commission and to the public through the next meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Link?
I just have a quick comment. Is there any way to determine, I mean, I know some roads degrade very, very quickly if there's been heavy construction on them. I know there's been a couple of roads in my district that have suddenly, almost overnight, ended up all rutted and potholey because there have been loads of dump trucks and stuff going on. Is there any way to get some compensation from developers or construction companies when public roads are degraded very rapidly due to heavy truckloads on, say, residential streets that don't typically get that kind of traffic?
Well, they really should be able to withstand even heavy truck traffic if the base is in good shape. If the base has issues, that's when you start seeing it fail very quickly. I know on at least one very large project, we worked with the owner to try to make sure that traffic was routed such that it would do the least damage to residential streets. So we don't have any policies per se, but we try to work proactively with contractors on that, on real large-scale projects where there's tons of
Yeah. Because I know there was a street in my district that ended up getting paved, and it had rapidly declined. And I mean, I remember it just showing up on the list when it wasn't before, and it was obvious that it had rapidly declined because of construction that had happened the year before. I don't know. I just wonder if maybe we could work those kind of considerations into our policies.
How would you prove it?
I don't know. You know, there's construction. I mean, there's permits out there that are pulled for the construction. I mean, there were dump truckloads of dirt. That's some heavy stuff.
Be good if we could find a model, just to see if there's something out there.
I wonder if there are other communities out there that do consider that.
You know, certainly in communities that are rapidly growing, oftentimes you see sort of a staggered approach to road construction such that, you know, say there are 20 roads in a new subdivision, they may wait to do the final pavement until the last one of those roads is occupied with homes. And so I think about seeing that kind of model in a concentrated way. I just off the top of my head can't think of seeing anything that deals with sort of a more staggered community in terms of age like ours. But if we find something, that'd
But
be
that's
great.
an example where a road might rapidly decline and deserve a place on the list that might end up bumping another road off.
Any other questions or comments on this item? All right, moving on to item number 7. This is our Community Energy Fund policy that we heard about at the work session a week ago. Any input on this item? Yeah, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a, I guess, a clarification. I had some contact with some constituents. So I think part of it was being confused over some of the media coverage of this. But just wanted to clarify for people watching and stuff like that, that this is not, we are not actually putting in place a new fee or tax. This is something that currently exists, and that we're simply partitioning it off for usage in this way. There was definitely some confusion, I think, with some of how it was written about in the media, that we were going to be levying a new tax or fee with this. And people were a little upset that it was being levied upon the energy users, but just wanted to clarify that that is not the case.
Thanks for making that clear. I think you and I were copied on one of the same emails that inferred that that was the case, when in fact there's no new fee that Athens-Clarke County is levying here. So, Commissioner Link.
I just want to thank Andrew Saunders for coming up with this plan. This is a really exciting means of tapping into a resource that can help ameliorate some of the impacts of these rapidly rising energy fees that we're seeing, due to that power plant construction, and also I believe the fees increased due to, Hurricane Michael cleanup, from what I understand. I mean, I was down there in South Georgia shortly after that, and it was a mess. And apparently Georgia Power is raising fees to help cover those costs. So this is really exciting, and I hope that we can continue to draft more policies that have an eye towards renewable energy, energy efficiency, a sustainable future. I'd like us to take a look at EV charging stations and incorporating requirements for those in new construction and in newly permitted gas stations as well. New construction, especially of multifamily housing. I was driving an EV for about a month recently, and we do have a few stations in town, and they're mostly kind of concentrated in the downtown area. And I was kind of paying attention to EV stations along my regular travel routes to visit family, and I think, it could, I looked at that new racetrack that's going in off the loop on Lexington, and I was like, that would be a perfect place for an EV station for somebody who's traveling. So I think we need to take a good look at, some of our planning and zoning codes and make some requirements for EV stations to be installed as new construction goes in.
Any other input on our community energy plan? Y'all okay moving this to consent?
Yes.
All right. I have a list. Number 7 moves to consent. Gene? All right. Number 8 is our TSPLOST 2018 project number 8, the Tallassee Road Bridge Replacement. Yeah. Commissioner Denson may be a regular user of this piece of infrastructure down the road. Any input on this item?
Consent?
I just had a question, maybe that management could just give a little bit of clarification on exactly what this item is compared to what I see as we're actually going to be hopefully getting the construction plans in the April cycle, I believe, but just talking about more of what this is specifically.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is a approval of a construction agreement with the railroad for the bridge. As you know, the bridge crosses over the railroad, and there are certain easements and right-of-way we have to acquire from the railroad, and of course they aren't subject, as far as I know, to eminent domain. And so it is a negotiation, and part of, you have to understand the construction is going to be occurring above an active train track. And so they're very concerned about safety, and they have union employees that need to be compensated for conducting the safety operations, being present, and as just for the viewing public's understanding, This agreement is for about $600,000 in railroad coordination expenses. And once they get that approval that we are hiring their folks to help safety, then they will release the easements. And then that's usually, we do the project concept, preliminary plans. After preliminary plans, we acquire right-of-way because we know the project limits a little bit better. And yes, then we will proceed to final construction plans and bid the project and return to y'all.
Okay, and we're expecting that in the April voting session. I think it says here in the, agenda report to MSC requesting construction contract approval in April 2020.
Yes, and then hopefully the notice to proceed with the contractor would occur in June.
Okay, fantastic. It's exciting. Thank you.
And if I might, just while I'm there, sorry, Commissioner, I do want to say that there was a call early on in the TSPLOST that you wanted things to move quickly, and I want to say that our staff has done an excellent job. The railroad has been accommodating, and in just over a couple of years, we've moved a bridge replacement project over an active railroad to where we're almost about to start construction. So I think that's pretty remarkable.
And in the vein of expeditiousness, I'd like to see this on the consent agenda.
Everybody okay with this on consent?
Yes.
All right, and just for the public, this bridge will also facilitate the multi-use trail that will parallel Tallassee Road approximately from Ben Burton Park to Bernie Harris Lyons Middle School as well. So it's a project I'm very excited about. All right, so moving on to item number 9. This is solar power for fire station number 4, which is SPLOST 2018 project number 23. There was a smaller renewable component of the 2011 SPLOST from which this draws funds. So, Commissioner Link.
Yeah, this is exciting. I just want to know which fire station is number 4?
Oglethorpe.
The Oglethorpe one? Okay, that's exciting.
Move it to consent.
I'm good with that.
Everybody okay with number 9 on consent? Yep. Man, we are winning tonight, my friends. All right, moving on to number 10, amending the Animal ServicesFY20 budget. As previously discussed, there are some new positions in animal services, and there's some overtime that's required as well. So any input on this item? Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I heard from a concerned constituent who does some volunteering at the animal shelter, voicing continued concerns about staffing. We've had this kind of reorganization, and I'm just wondering if there's any impediments to these new staff positions being filled. Can the manager address any of that?
Well, there is the part-time nature of some of the positions that I think you'll see some recommendations of converting those to full-time, and that's something that we've been doing. You did earlier with some positions and something in animal services, but also in transit last year through the budget. So that's part of it. Part of it is, the work is tough. It's a tough situation out there. And then also there's some weekend work required. So all of those things are, and the pay as well. So all of that kind of comes together. But we're hopeful that we're going to find the right people. I personally visited the animal shelter yesterday and saw some of the staff and saw the conditions. And I can tell you that, from what I understand from Assistant Manager Edwards and Interim Director Gardner, it's not necessarily a morale issue that's pushing people out. It's just, trying to find that right person to fill the job.
So kitten season is coming up as the weather warms up. Is there a plan in place? I know that, part of the things that went wrong the past couple of years is that they didn't anticipate the increased number of cats coming in. Is there now a plan to deal with that?
Yes, there's preparations underway, and we want to partner with, we're talking to our partners in a way we hadn't in previous years to help us prepare for that. And some of the expenses that are being asked for your approval will help us prepare as well.
I'm happy to see this go on consent.
Yep.
Everybody okay with this on consent? All right. 10 moves to consent as well. Item number 11 is on everybody's agenda by title only. This is an agreement with Advantage Behavioral Health Systems. In brief, This would be a loan to Advanced Behavioral Health Systems to renovate space that they're already leasing from us to move some of their residential programming up to the North Avenue facility. And so there's some language with that contract that will be coming forward to you in the next couple of weeks. So Commissioner Neesmith, I don't know if you want to detail anything else.
Well, I think I've tried to keep everybody up to speed on this situation, which is beyond critical now. I mean, we're not going to get that space built out even if we had the $200,000 tonight by March the 31st. But Advantage is working to find some temporary housing for these women and their families, and this will be a good step, and it is just a loan. They're going to pay us back by the rent they would have paid in the apartments that they're in now. So it'll be a 1 or 2 year payback. It's a healthy program. There's no risk to us, minimum risk to us. There's always risk, minimum risk to us, and it's important. So I appreciate your support.
All right, we have a single planning and zoning item, so I am going to move down to next to Manager Williams, and Planning Director Brad Griffin is going to come up. All right, and we're going to get a short presentation from Planning Director Griffin on this item, and then there's the opportunity for public input.
Okay, just one for you tonight. It is a request to amend an existing industrial zoning with conditions on it at 350, 360, and 380 Will Hunter Road. This was a property that was zoned to industrial back in 2004, I believe, 14, about 6 years ago, and it had long history with it. It had been zoned residential for many years. Owner brought it forward and self-imposed some restrictions on uses and put some conditions on it in order to get the industrial zoning, largely for the ability to use it for a C and D type construction, landfill, storage of concrete and those types of things. About 30 acres in size. The proposed additional use that's being asked for in this cycle is a wood waste recycling and organic composting operation. It would be added as an additional use to the property. It is compatible with the employment future land use designation, and there are no additional voluntary development conditions or binding plans associated with this, although if approved, the conditions would carry forward from the previous rezoning in 14. Here were those conditions that were put in place. Dealt with a buffer along the street, no additional buildings to be built. You can see them there. Hours of operation, no lighting, and then they were under an EPD-approved management plan for the facility and the property. You see the property down at the end of Will Hunter Road along the river. Aerial.
And that's our water treatment plant?
That's
Our water.
What did I?
No, it's on the south.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the water treatment plant.
Water treatment is just below it.
Okay.
Get this going. And then you can see the Will Hunter Road there, the entrance to the facility on the left side, and the proximity of that facility to the Blackman Shoals subdivision, only a couple hundred feet away. Again, existing zoning. This was the 13 management plan. In staff comments, we recommended to the Planning Commission not to support this request. There were a number of concerns we had. Some of them were just unsatisfied rezoning conditions that were put in place by the applicant back in 13, it looks like. When we went out there to start doing the work on this one, when it went through in 14, it was just to add a use. There were no permits, no requirements for construction to take place, so accordingly there was no follow-up inspections necessary to issue COs on the property. A couple of these things just never got done, it appears, from 13. Does not appear that the buffer was ever put in, the appropriate fencing was not put in. So we've got some unsatisfied conditions we had concerns with, but probably the two biggest concerns that we conveyed in our report to the Planning Commission was the proximity for this type of an additional use and the potential for odors and vectors that go along with this type of a use, really, really close to an existing neighborhood. And there were a couple of those neighbors that showed up and spoke in opposition. And then it's just such a substandard road coming off of Millage to get back there to add another use that would continue to increase traffic back in there, we had concerns with as well. Planning Commission shared those concerns and are sending you a recommendation to deny this request, and it was a unanimous vote.
All right, during agenda setting meetings, when we have planning and zoning items, there's opportunity for anybody to speak for 3 minutes as per the earlier guidelines. So is there anybody who would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, this is in Commissioner Edwards' district, and he's not here this evening. Would anyone like to speak to this? Commissioner Neesmith?
I'm sure that Commissioner Wright and I have a thing or two to say about it, at least I
I have
do.
nothing, Jerry. Don't add me to it.
We are familiar with this area for various and sundry reasons, but I agree with the Planning Commission. Those apartments are too close for these kinds of uses, and there are some pending, some development initiatives going on in that area for additional housing. So that would make this even more inappropriate, and housing is a good idea back in there. This was a former landfill, so the use of this land is very limited. Can't build on it. It used to be a ACC land, or a landfill, or a county landfill, I guess, would have been.
I think it was a
Anyway, city? Okay, so it is a limited use, and what it's being used for now is about all it should be used for, in my opinion.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I have concerns about this too, because of the heavy truck traffic. And I'm just curious, with a covered landfill like this, what are uses that are considered appropriate?
I think I've got it listed here. Maybe we did not. There was a short list of uses that were included as part of the rezoning back in 2013. One of them was, it's basically a construction debris landfill, but it was limited to clean concrete and wood products, I
So
believe.
that's what's underneath, that's what's been included?
No. That's what they were proposing in 2013 was to have the ability to bring it in and hold it on site. It allowed for a communications tower to go on it. It allowed, I think, for RV. There was just 2 or 3 limited uses. What the applicant was trying to do was have the ability to use it for the concrete holding and
So
storage.
basically, this rezone is to add that?
Yes.
To add a construction?
No, the rezoning tonight would be to allow them to add the waste, the composting operation and the wood waste recycling.
All right, any other questions about this? All right, this being the end of our agenda setting meeting, entertain a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second?
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Harrod, second from Commissioner Parker to enter executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, we are now going to move into executive session.